Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you at this conference on behalf of the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. I'm Kishan Khoday. I'm the regional team leader for nature, climate, and energy for UNDP in the Arab region. And what I'd like to do today is provide an overview of ways that the UN is partnering with countries across the region to advance sustainable energy solutions, and to do it in a way that leaves no one behind, provides support for the resilience of communities in the region, many of which are affected by various forms of crises, not the least the ongoing pandemic and economic crisis affecting the entire region. Sustainable energy solutions can be a significant added value to country efforts to recover from the crisis and to build back better towards a sustainable development pathway. So what I'll do now is provide a brief overview of our cooperation across the region, ways of working with public and private partners on this agenda. So the UN Development Program, UNDP, is the UN's largest implementer of grant assistance for climate change, energy, and environment in the Arab region. We currently implement $500 million of grants in the region today. Country initiatives on things like climate resilient development, low carbon sustainable energy solutions, water security, waste management, various other aspects of the environment agenda. We've been present in the Arab region for over 50 years with country offices across the region, working locally with partners over decades on local development issues. Our environment cooperation on climate change, on energy, on environment, this is meant to help combat poverty in the region, which is expanding as it is elsewhere in the world, to accelerate transformations to sustainability, including the sustainable energy transition, and to develop capacities to prevent and recover from crisis, for which issues of like climate change and energy play a key role. So UNDP policy and program support to our national partners in the region. We support project development and implementation with national as well as subnational partners. Policy advice to national counterparts on global priorities, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, various multilateral environment agreements on climate change, land degradation, water, desertification, etc. We help to mobilize resources, include using our global public funds as catalytic tool for bringing in larger levels of private finance, concessional lending, etc., trying to help countries synergize these various tracks of financing towards the environment agenda. We do this through country projects, as I'll soon provide an overview of, but we also have regional projects which serve as regional platforms to work with regional intergovernmental organizations and other bodies to scale up local action at the regional level. And various, of course, activities on the knowledge product front, advocacy and communication activities to raise awareness on these issues, but also convening, of course, policy dialogues, not least with public and private partners in the region. We have a significant team in the region, approximately 15 regional experts across these issues. So coming first to the issue of climate change, one of the top development issues around the world and definitely in the region. It's a major driver of poverty and inequality today. Climate resilient solutions are key to building the capacity of communities to increase food and water security and to achieve resilient livelihoods. Climate change is also a driver of broader transformation as an existential threat to the future of development in the region, and is catalyzing rethinking of development pathways, new climate resilient development strategies in many countries around the region. And lastly, it's really a driver of crisis increasingly, the role of climatic disasters, but also the role that climate change plays in things like displacement, as well as onset of local conflicts among communities, owing to resource insecurity. But it's also quite critical to mainstream future climate risks into the economic recovery plans that countries are now putting together. This is a very brief overview of some of the climate change projects we have in the region, looking at things like coastal resilience to rising sea levels and more frequent storms, looking at ways to enhance the national climate plans, the NDCs, on the road to the next COP26 under the Paris Agreement, looking at innovative social protection mechanisms such as climate risk insurance through cooperation with the private sector, capacities for things like early warning systems to make communities more resilient to more frequent droughts that have had such an impact in the region in recent years, more climate resilient food and water systems and agriculture systems. Second major priority in our cooperation region is on nature-based solutions. Natural resources have of course played a key role in the region's achievements on poverty reduction, links to sectors such as agriculture and fisheries, for example, but also key environmental services at the urban level, waste and water services, etc. And this calls really for transformation also in urban development and resource development strategies towards a circular and green economy solutions as we look to the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. This is critical as well for crisis prevention and recovery priorities in the region, given that many natural resources are co-managed across communities and countries with better systems of governance needed to reverse the loss of biodiversity, resource insecurity levels. This is a very brief overview again of some of our initiatives in the region, with a major focus, for example, on expanding the restoration of environmental services such as water access, waste management services in conflict affected countries of the region, places like Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Palestine, but also in better harnessing the role of nature-based solutions for sustainable growth, for livelihoods, links to the tourism sector, sustainable livelihoods for communities around national parks, etc. And very importantly, our cooperation on transboundary water resource management in the region is one of the most critical assets in the region, natural assets. So coming to the key focus of this panel and the overall conference and our role in advancing sustainable energy pathways, a major pillar under our cooperation in the region. Our focus is really on how can we expand energy access, sustainable energy access as a means of combating poverty and inequality in the region. Solar solutions for SMEs, for irrigation for agriculture and farmers' livelihoods, as well as for schools and hospitals in the region that really lack sustainable access to energy in many countries of the region. It's also critical from a broader perspective on economic transformation as the region now looks to stabilizing and recovering from the ongoing crisis, economic crisis, with solar solutions, for example, being now a very cost-effective means of meeting growing electricity demands while also saving oil and gas exports, for example, for future export revenues. And lastly, for countries in the region affected by many years of conflict, solar solutions are really coming forward as a practical, decentralized means of meeting the basic needs of conflict-affected communities, of displaced communities. So solar solutions for those critical public services, whether it's hospitals, schools, water access, and other needs. So a key element in building back better from crisis. A brief overview of our ongoing sustainable energy projects across the region. As mentioned earlier, a big part of our focus is really on expanding energy access for the poor and for crisis-affected communities. So significant initiatives in places like Yemen, Iraq, Libya, Sudan, and Somalia, just to name a few fragile and crisis-affected countries that have over the years sought to expand energy access for the poor and for stabilization and recovery of crisis-affected communities. And this has grown even more significant, of course, with the impacts of the pandemic and the economic crisis that's unfolded. In many countries, as seen in the region, our initiatives also look at broader upscale impact, looking at the policy level, trying to put in place centers of excellence, for example, in the Gulf countries, in places like Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, but also looking at ways to use those policy instruments to de-risk greater levels of private sector finance for sustainable energy. Places like Tunisia and Lebanon, where we've partnered on those kind of national de-risking policies. And in many countries in the region that are agriculture reliant in terms of livelihoods, a big focus on mobilizing solar solutions for things like irrigation, water pumping, and enhancing livelihoods and income for rural farmers. So a brief deep dive in the short time that we have on the sustainable energy projects, on some of them, just to get a flavor for our initiatives. And of course, we'll be happy to partner with with any participants in the conference and discuss further. One important example is our initiative on energy transformation in Saudi Arabia, which has been going on for about 7 years through a large contribution from the government. This looks at reducing the energy intensity of growth and the development model in the kingdom. A large national energy efficiency program, which we support, through which we helped establish a national center of excellence as a platform in the country for new policies, for scaling up public awareness on the importance of energy conservation, and really as a platform for bringing together public and private partners, over a dozen public and private partners in the country under this initiative for advancing energy efficiency in sectors like power, industry, buildings. Another good example is on cities and trying to scale up sustainable energy solutions in urban development. In Jordan, for example, this initiative helps to achieve low carbon objectives, while also, of course, reducing air pollution and improving citizen health at the municipal level in Amman. And the key focus here being on expanding energy efficiency in key urban energy intensive sectors such as buildings and transport, and at the policy level through urban planning, trying to set a path towards more sustainable use of energy in the urban context. In Tunisia, as I mentioned, an important focus for UNDP and in other countries as well is on new policies and plans at the national level that can de-risk private investments into renewable energy in Tunisia through the National Solar Plan that UNDP has helped establish, and as a basis for energy transformation and for economic recovery, as a key feature in keeping momentum on this energy transformation that's taking shape across the region. Lebanon, of course, has been facing many challenges in recent times, various pressures and various sources of fragility, and through this initiative on solar solutions for crisis recovery in Lebanon, a big focus on building entrepreneurship for distributed renewable energy solutions, working with small and medium enterprises and communities to help recover from various crises that are affecting the country, with energy being an important thread across these crises to help stabilize communities and build a better future. Specific focus on things like innovation and entrepreneurship, technology transfer, building local ecosystems for the solar market, and of course that critical piece on enabling policies and institutional capacities at the national level. Yemen, one of the most challenging contexts in the world, and our solar initiative in Yemen is an important one in that sense, trying to close the gap for communities that have been affected over the last several years by the ongoing conflict, but also now looking this year and into the future, the impacts of the pandemic and the economic crisis. A joint UN initiative with our sister UN agencies. UNDP supports the deployment of solar solutions as a way of restoring livelihoods and powering critical services such as schools, clinics, and other public facilities. And so this is an important example of how advancing sustainable energy solutions can really meet the needs of those most in need, the poorest in the region. In Somalia, similarly, a focus on really working with local communities to shift, in this case, from in this program in Somalia, from charcoal use to renewable energy solutions. This is a critical piece of being able to build the resilience of local communities and ecosystems Thousands of households have been supported to transition to sustainable energy solutions, alternative livelihood support to move away from the charcoal trade, and in turn helping to protect those acacia ecosystems from where the charcoal trade is based. Last but not least, in Sudan, as I mentioned earlier, a key piece of our cooperation in the region is really to expand solar irrigation solutions for poor rural farmers. So this is an important bottom-up solution that can really expand off-grid solar solutions for irrigation, livelihoods, income for the poor, and as well as increasing water use efficiency. An important feature of this initiative is to build on those local solutions to help scale them up through activation of a national solar fund that the program has helped develop. And so this is looking at also the longer term value of solar solutions for an economic recovery and a path to sustainable development in Sudan. In addition to these core initiatives, there are very dedicated activities and support services that we provide our partners related to the pandemic and the economic crisis. The first piece is on the risk assessment, so looking at what are those opportunities for integrating energy into the response and recovery in key sectors like infrastructure, industry, transport. Immediate deployment of energy solutions, solar solutions for things like medical facilities, ICU units, but also, as I mentioned earlier, ways to really stabilize small and medium enterprises and livelihoods. And the third pillar on the broader, longer term recovery, let's say, ways to integrate solar solutions into fiscal stimulus. So as industry benefits from stimulus, that it can transition to the sustainable energy future, including the role of mobilizing new public-private partnerships and international partnerships to mobilize catalytic finance to that goal. And so with that, I would like to conclude here and thank you once again for the opportunity to share this with the panel. And on behalf of UNDP, I'd like to again thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to a interesting discussion. Thank you very much.